Well, welcome back to Israel with Linda and I, and we're going to get more and more spiritual with you as we go on. This is St. Gerasimos down near Jericho, where we met some monks, and they make mosaics, and this is them putting those mosaics. They go in churches on the floor, and that's going to be more important later, as you see in our video. This is Noor and his Mercedes taxi. He's taken us everywhere in the last 5 years that we've been to Israel, and we appreciate him. We're down in Jericho. Actually, we're above it at the Monastary, the Church of Temptation. Jesus' Temptation, that's the church there on the side of the cliff. It overlooks Jericho and the Jordan Valley, and he would have seen and looked out and seen John the Baptist ministry. That's the cave where it said he fasted and prayed for 40 days and was tempted 3 times by Lucifer with the rock there in front of the cave. We left there, went back down into Jericho, drove around. This is the mosque in the center of the city in the West Bank. Couldn't use our rental car, had to take Noor because in the West Bank you have to use a taxi. We're in the Wadi Kelt, and this is a special place. You hike about 2 hours in the desert, and you come up on St. George's Monastery there on the side of the cliff. It's a very unique, serene, special place. We enjoyed it very much. It's a steep hike down into the canyon and then back out. They have these individual sails for the monks to go into retreat to, and some are built up into the side of the cliff walls and a little bit difficult to get into, but they go in for special prayer there. That's the view as we leave the canyon and we head back to the car. I spent some time to myself, spiritual time, and sent Linda ahead, and she was really a brave soldier. There she is out in the desert with Noor and our Bedouin friend Mohammed. I took that photo on zoom lens from a couple hundred yards away, so she was really a trooper. Also on the way out, there's a path that leads from St. George's Monastery to the Temptation, and these are the Orthodox nuns walking on that path. Bethany at night, Linda in the tomb of St. Lazarus, and she's still alive as well, where Jesus performed that miracle of raising Lazarus from the dead. We leave there, and we head towards the kibbutz with our friend Guy and his wife Natalie. They invited us to have lunch with them, and it's a farming kibbutz. Those are John Deere tractors. We're so proud to see those nice green machines there. And so Guy showed us around the kibbutz that day, and we're always talking about trees and fauna. So actually Linda was explaining to him about that tree, but I think that's one of the trees they use to make the thorns for the crown of thorns with. And so I finally found a spiritual place for Guy and I could talk up on the top of an abandoned building up on the flat roof. We climbed up there and had a spiritual and political conversation, and we enjoyed that time, and I think I'll be returning there when I come back. But what you go up, you got to come down, and I think that ladder's from the time of Peter when he climbed up on the roof to have a moment with God, because that's a rickety old wooden ladder, but we enjoyed it very much. And whenever Linda gets a chance, she's always taking pictures of these poppies. Wherever she finds them, she just thinks they're beautiful. I do as well. We went south down into the Negev, almost to Egypt, to a place called Ovdat. It was a Nabatean city called the City of the Caves. And you'll see why here in a second they call it the City of the Caves, because it's a city full of caves. They built their homes into the wall, and it's very high up in the desert. It's on a mountain. You can see it there. And they built the city, and they also, with it, when they converted from the Nabatean religion over to Christianity, they built 2 churches. And the first one is from the year 236, one of the oldest still existing, if you will, churches in the world. And you'll see that it looks almost identical to the way we have our churches today in our own specific Holy Cross church and how it looks. There's 2. This is the second one. It's a little bit newer, if you will, and after we look at the altar here, a marble altar that they had, you'll see something interesting. There is a tomb for one of the priests, and you'll see a menorah between 2 crosses. Still very much a Jewish influence at that time in Christianity. We left there, headed towards town. Linda saw these signs and the camels and just had to pull over and let us take a picture. Beware of the camels near the road. We left the Jerusalem area, went up to the Mediterranean to Netanya. It was cold, it was wet, it was rainy, it was about 50 degrees, but we just had to get out, and you'll see some pictures in a few minutes of Netanya. We were learning to live a regular life, and so there's Linda. She's hammering away at the chicken so she can make schnitzel. and she's learning how to do the laundry and hanging it out on the side of the building. We're about 6 floors up. You can see other people hanging their laundry out. If you look carefully in the next slide, you can see the Mediterranean way down on the end between the cracks between the buildings. If you look out the bathroom window, that was our view. Very exciting place. This is for all of you at the daycare. This is a daycare just around the corner from the apartment. They have these about every 3-4 blocks, something like that. They have 30 to 50 children, it seems like, from what we can tell, in each of these daycares. So we headed down to the beach, take some pictures. Is this St. Augustine? Is this Netanya? It's hard to know. There's some surfers. They were out in the rain and cold. They didn't care, but they were having a good time. It reminded me of St. Augustine so much. Can't wait to get back home. We traveled up to Sepphoris on Saturday. This is a city about 4 miles from Nazareth, where Jesus grew up. In fact, this is his grandparents' city. We'll talk about that some more later, so he would have spent a lot of time here, he and Joseph, because this is Mary's parents' home, and this was a major city in the Galilee area at the time. And so he would have come over here to work. Elena wanted us to show you, these are ruts that have been carved into or worn into the pavement, the stones there, from all the work. That's the top of the hill. If you go over that hill, it's Nazareth. So it's not very far to this place, Sepphoris. And it was a Jewish city, but very Roman influenced. They still do excavation there. This is an example of it. So they take and put the dirt in that box, and then they shake it, and the dirt falls through, and what's left is possibly something worth saving. You always get the idea that everybody lived in these little rock shacks. Well, this is a recreation, but this is a villa there in Sepphoris, and you can see they lived nice. Some people did who had money, same as today. And they had a mosaic in the floor of their home, in their villa there. Mosaics were very important in Jesus' time, and for centuries after, and in churches. So now, we've done a little tour. Let's talk about some spiritual things. Let's head back to Ovdat and talk about how the church then and the church today are very much alike. Here's the baptismal. We talked about the one in Emmaus, when the sign of the cross is the baptismal, the deacon and the person to be baptized standing in there. To the left corner there is where they pour the fresh water into it, in Christian ways, making it a mikveh. Look closely down to the bottom left. That's a bench, a stone bench going along the wall, just like in the synagogues, like in Capharnaum, and just like in our church today. In the far end, in the asp down there, you'll see an iconostasis, what's left of it. Here's the relief on the front of it. It's the same height as the one we have here in Holy Cross Church. So your church is designed in almost identical fashion to the early church that our brothers and sisters in the first few centuries worshipped in. That's where the rest of the iconostasis was, in front of the altar. And there's that, the priest was buried within the church, and in the menorah with the 2 crosses on each side. Judaism and Christianity side by side in the early churches. And there with the marble altar in the front of the church. Back to finish up, back to Sepphoris. And the buildings there you can see, some people lived very nice lives, and this is the city that Jesus' grandparents, Mary's parents, were from. We'll talk about that more in a moment. They had a timeline on one of the buildings of the city, and it says the beginning of the common era. They wouldn't even write Jesus' name. But it does talk about after the death of Herod the Great, his son Herod Antipas ruled the Galilee from Zippori. So now we see Joachim, whose name means Yahweh prepares, was the father of the Virgin Mary. Joachim and his wife Anne, or Anna, were the parents of Mary and the grandparents of Jesus, and they were from Sepphoris, Zippori, in some ways that you say it. It's very important because there's an ancient synagogue in this city, and there you see icons, mosaic icons all over the floor. And here we have some lions, and they're going to talk about a word called bema. These are on the floor in front of the bema. It says the lions positioned at the head of the mosaic next to the bema seem to have represented guardians, just like the bema we have in our church today. I'm so proud of Holy Cross Church and all of you for that. So your church is just like the early church was. There is another icon. This is of Sarah. How do we know this is of Sarah? It's kind of hard to tell. Well, there was a church, and still is today. They know the complete detail of this mosaic because the mid-6th century wall mosaic, there it is, from Italy, and there's Sarah, is the same one that's on the floor of that synagogue. your church that you're worshiping in today, what we believe and what we practice, is the same as was practiced in Jesus' day and by the apostles. I want to encourage you as we move into the last week of our trip to remember to put Jesus first and have faith in your church and in your God. In the meantime, I pray for you and say, Shalom.